Welcome to Free Hustle Podcast. I'm Mike.
And this is Orlando, and we're on episode 445, a themed episode.
That's right. So the way our podcast typically works is every other Wednesday we drop a different type of episode. So 1 week will be our update episodes where we talk about current events in the reselling world, what we are doing reselling wise. And then we have our themed episodes on the following weeks. And so these where we talk about something specific about reselling. So maybe a very specific topic, could be shipping, could be taxes, could be some kind of strategy to help your store grow. So we like these episodes. We also include some hustles of the week. So some encouraging finds that our listeners have found and are sharing with us, as well as the finds that we've had recently. So yeah, what are we talking about today, Orlando?
So I thought I'd bring this up, and I should have discussed this with you before, but in the last, I would say 6 to 8 months, there's been a lot of comments in our thread, right? And, some people are like saying, Orlando, you never talked about when the stock market collapsed because of Trump's tariffs. And I'm like, you know what? That's fine. Trump's tariffs have collapsed our market. There, I said it, right? Before we talked about under the other administration, right? Like things were rough in reselling, right? And so I've seen all these comments, like one is like, oh, because of President Biden, reselling is dead, or because of President Trump's reselling is dead, right? And it becomes like this whole, like, let's blame the macro environment, right, for reselling. But the reality is, it doesn't matter who's in charge. As far as reselling goes, people make a way, right? There were people killing it during the era where we can leave our homes. There were people killing it after that. There were people killing it before. I'm sure there were people killing it in the 80s and 90s before eBay even existed. And even now, right? We're in a tough economic climate right now, and I don't know how long that'll be. That things could turn around in a month. They could turn around in 4 years. Don't know. And you and I talked about a lot in the last couple of years about the dangers of inflation and stagflation, but you and I think have always been consistent that there are resellers that are always killing it. Like no matter what, it doesn't matter, right? Because reselling is not dependent on what a government does. It's not depending on policies or rules. Like, yeah, sometimes there's something that affects us, like, when it comes to taxes.
Yeah,
but
there for
the
sure
end,
impacts. Yeah.
There's impacts, but in the end, right, there's always a way to make reselling happen. So today I want to talk about the idea that, in reselling, right, there are still people killing it. And some of the reasons why there are still people that are making it happen, because they're all over social media. I personally know a lot of people that are actually even doing better now than they were 3-4 months ago. And there's other people that aren't doing so well than they were 3-4 months ago. And if it was true that governments or policies had a direct effect on people's sales, then you would see that. But the reality is there are people making it no matter what happens. So kind of want to talk about why that is the case. Like, why should it not matter? Why you should continue reselling and continue making it happen regardless of how things are? Because we've read many documents, right, that even in recessions, reselling actually takes off.
Yeah.
Right.
And see, like I think we've been pretty consistent in saying, for really since, I don't remember when we really started hitting the nail, like beating it over and over and over with the idea of like, hey, we're in a recession, or we're heading towards a recession, and people were saying, hey, it's not a recession, it's not a recession. It's like, well, I don't know, like the data according to like how we've looked at things, but even then we were saying like reselling is still very, very, very profitable, and you kind of have to pivot, and there are going to be impacts, but a lot of times that can be favorable to us as resellers. And so, I would have made the argument that we've been in a recession for a long time. I think that things are going to start catching up, and at some point people might call it a recession versus people, haven't been calling it a recession. But either way, in some ways it's actually beneficial to us because, going to that idea of tariffs, and I don't want to get into long discussions about tariffs and all that is involved with that again, because we've had those conversations on the podcast already. But the reality is, if it becomes harder for the average consumer to acquire cheap new goods from overseas, if that becomes more expensive, if it's like, hey, all of these like random trinkets that I'm able to get for basically pennies, those are harder to get. My Dollar Tree type items are harder to find now, and they cost more money than they used to cost. Well, what are people going to do? They're going to look for quality, and they're going to buy used. And so it is very, very likely that us as resellers, if you're selling we all know like that we made the joke in the past on the podcast about like middle of the mall stuff, right? Like if it's just say no middle of the mall jewelry, right? There are the cheap items, there are the throwaway clothing brands, there are the throwaway things. You walk into a Goodwill, you go to a garage sale, 90% of what you see is really just garbage. Like we look at it and we go, it wouldn't be worth our time. You're not going to be able to make any money. Nobody really wants this stuff. And if they do, it's not going to last. Whereas there's certain brands, sometimes it's people buy because they just want the brand, but a lot of times they're buying because, hey, I know this is a brand that holds up. I know this is a product that holds up. This is, vintage. It's from the 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, and it was good and it's going to stay good. It's not going to break. And so as resellers, we're in a good spot if those are the items you're picking up because people are looking for those things. People are going to say, hey, if I can go to Walmart and now this cheap plastic tricycle thing costs twice as much as it used to cost. Well, I'm not going to buy it for that price because it's garbage. And I'd rather go on eBay and buy a used metal one that's from the 70s or 80s, but I know it's going to last up until my grandkids are born, right? Like it's going to be a quality item. And so it really does put us in a good place knowing that, and this is our first point here, is in a lot of ways used is the new normal. A lot of younger Gen Z and millennials, and the millennials really aren't the young generation anymore. It's these Zoomers coming up. I know a lot of people who are in the college age, and so many of them go to places like Goodwill and they do a lot of thrifting. And sometimes it's this trendy thing because they're trying to be environmentally conscious or they're looking for certain things. But it is becoming very common for people to shop for clothes on places like ThredUp and Poshmark. And I see so many of even high school students who are doing that. And so us as resellers, we already typically have a good inventory of those items. We know how to source those items. And so people are going to be looking to purchase those types of things.
No, I agree. And it's the new normal, right? I got to tell you, you and I are both in education, right? And, I would say most of the students I see either have thrifted their items, right? We still do have like people buying like the streetwear stuff, right? Getting the Jordans or getting, Supreme or whatever it is. But I would say most, at least in my experience, and I've been in both parts of California. I've been in San Francisco, which I would say is more leaning towards thrifting. San Diego, like the scene isn't, I don't think it's heavy as San Francisco, but there's a bunch of people thrifting, right? And so new isn't as cool as it was anymore. And I would say overall people, for many reasons, right? You had mentioned the idea that people like getting used items that are not imported, that are like American made because they're great quality, right? I think of right now, like the heavy denim market in like thrifting, like there's a lot of money to be made in heavy denim, right? And in Japan, they go for good money, right? But the stigma, right, of this idea of used, right, is pretty much gone, right? It's not like it was, you and I have talked about when we were younger, like at least I know for myself, I'd go to a thrift store. I'm like, oh, why am I going to a thrift store? Like, this is not cool. Like, what if somebody sees me? And now people are like, no, like the uncool thing is to go out there and spend all this money on these throwaway fashions, right? This fast fashion. And it's better to buy sustainable. It's better to buy thrifted. It's better to buy things that just look better, I would say, and are better quality. All right. And eBay kind of pushes that, right? We talked about how Jamie Ione, in the latest discussion and the I think it was Q1 results, had talked about how eBay is kind of like niching down into more used categories.
Yeah. No, that's good. I mean, that kind of goes back to that idea of, if people are going to buy pins, right? Like, of course, there's going to be the cheap pins that just the everyday student is going to purchase. But as resellers, unless your way of selling was to buy, thousands of like cheap Bic pins from, somewhere you were able to source from China or somewhere overseas, and then sell them at very slim margins on Amazon, most of the people listening to our podcast, that's not how they're reselling, right? They're learning a specific brand. Like maybe they're like, okay, like I've learned like good stationery, and like I've been able to collect a handful of like Mont Blanc pins, right? And those aren't American made, those are German made, but those are the types of pins that we would sell as resellers, right? Like we wouldn't be selling just, I have a bunch of random Bic pins unless they're like a vintage something. And so if people are saying, hey, I'm stuck at a place where if it's true, if things do start going up in price, hey, if the cheap cruddy Bic pins that are basically throwaway pins go up in price, I'd rather just pay a little bit more and get like a really nice pin. And so I think there's going to be a shift of people looking for higher quality things as that price gap narrows, right? As it's like, hey, the cheaper stuff price is going up. Well, that's going to make the stuff that's like, a little bit higher quality closer and more attainable for people if they're making that comparison. Because if you're looking, I occasionally buy things off of Temu just because it's like, hey, I know this is junk, but it's so cheap. Like, why not? But if I'm going to spend the money on it, if those Temu prices go up, I'm going to say, well, I'm going to make sure I get the best version of it I can get if that price difference gets closer. So I think, again, as resellers, we don't tend to sell the cheapest junk. We tend to sell the stuff that's a little bit more sought after, has a little bit more longevity to it, maybe higher quality. And so I think in the short term, like, it's actually going to definitely benefit us, especially as people are used to that, right? Like, people become more used to having used, whether it's clothing, whether it's just random items that they're going to have for their house. I wouldn't be surprised if we see in the next couple of years, especially if we see like major market corrections happening and we see, different countries trying to figure out how to deal with what the US is doing. Well, okay, as resellers, we can definitely offset some of those problems for us by being able to sell more items. So I think there's definitely benefits to be made. And then going back to that idea of reselling is valuable on both ends of the market, because then if we're in the other side where it's like, hey, let's say all this blows over, we go back to like a normal, what we've been used to over the last decade of an expansion instead of a retraction period in the economy. Well, that means there's more money flowing in the economy. And so again, people are going to be buying our stuff. So there really isn't a huge downside for resellers, whether the market's up or down.
No, I agree. And the nice thing about that too is our second discussion here is the idea that, like, in reselling, it's not only is it low overhead, but you're able to easily adapt, right? You're able to shift really quick. It's not like other businesses, like a restaurant, or I don't know, maybe you're driving like an Uber or Lyft or whatever it is. Like, it's pretty hard to pivot. But with reselling, right, you don't necessarily, unless you do have a brick and mortar, but you don't have a storefront, right? You don't have bills to pay. You don't have employees to take care of, right? You may not even have massive inventory, right? You may only have like a few hundred items. And if you begin to find out, like, you know what, I probably sourced incorrectly, like, you can quickly pivot and start sourcing the right stuff. And so you can adjust your prices. If like, hey, I got to sell stuff right away, you can run a sale. If you want to go on Whatnot, like, you can sell stuff on Whatnot for really cheap. I've always mentioned this to people, like, if you ever want to have like a safety net as a reseller, make sure you sell over 1,000 items on Whatnot, right? I don't think we even do that on Pure as a podcast, but the 1,000, once you hit that 1,000, by the next day, you get an instant deposit on everything you sell. And so if you're low on cash and you need quick cash, you can sell kind of your inventory that you're not holding on to it, right? It's something that you're willing to let go at a decent price or maybe a very low price, but you can quickly adjust, right? And I think that the resellers that are killing it have figured this out, right? They're not stuck in their old ways. They're not complaining. They're not on e-commerce bites talking about the good old days of eBay. Instead, they are pivoting quickly and making these decisions, right? So that allows, right, these resellers that are killing it right now to make a decent amount of profit, even though times are pretty difficult, right? Yeah. And it doesn't matter. Like, they adjust quickly, because in reselling, you can adjust quickly.
Yeah, I think that idea of being able to pivot quickly is really important, because, I'm a pretty big believer that, we've had a pretty broken system for a long time. I think that, if you look at what it takes to survive. I mean, the reason why we hustle this hard is, I feel like, two reasons. Like, reason number one is we're built that way. Like, we're built to want to succeed. Those of us who are listening to Pure Hustle podcasts and out reselling, it's like, hey, I don't want to just survive. I want to thrive. And so there's that hustle aspect, but there's also the aspect of, hey, it's a lot harder today than it was for like our grandparents, as far as being able to have, a decent income and be able to just pay for everything, have houses paid for, low student loans. Like, it is really hard. Like, if I was a 20-year-old today, holy cow, like it is tough to make anything work. And so a lot of people are kind of forced into reselling. It's like they need to hustle. And so I do think there needs to be a lot of fixes, but when you fix anything, it takes a lot of time. And so if it's years before, the kind of the promise and the vision of like, manufacturing catching up here, or things catching up here, if it takes that time, it's really hard for a company. Like, I get like why certain companies are like, hey, sure, like we're going to have to raise our prices, we're going to have to do these things, and it's going to take us 4 years or 5 years to build a factory here to be able to kind of adjust to this situation. It certainly does not take us 4 to 5 years to make an adjustment as a reseller. Like, we can make adjustments really quickly. Whether it's a change in the market, like, hey, Pokemon cards are big. Oh, Pokemon cards aren't big anymore. I'm going to pivot into something else. We don't have that worry of like, hey, electricity went up a little bit, or rent prices are doubling because of, whatever. We don't have as much of we're not impacted as much by that. And of course, we're still impacted. I mean, if prices of things go up, I mean, your day-to-day living is going to go up, so you're going to have to make more, but you have a lot more flexibility and can pivot quicker as a reseller. So it is a very flexible market to be in. And so I'm definitely grateful for that. It kind of gives you that ability to weather a storm, because if you've got to go through the storm to get to the other side, as a reseller, we can pivot and make adjustments, micro adjustments. It's really hard. And we've talked in the past about like, a little boat can make minor adjustments, and like eBay, we've used the metaphor as like a big, like, like cruise ship, or a big, I don't know, it's harder for it to turn. In order to make an adjustment to something, that turn takes a long time to make. And so us as individual resellers, we can make those quick micro adjustments and adapt to the economy. So if we do see, hey, because of our current situation, certain used goods are going up in price, I can adjust my prices quickly. Other things are going down, so I'm going to drop those prices, so I have that cash flow moving in, and I can move into a more profitable niche. And so, yeah, I think it is very helpful to be as agile as we can be as resellers. And I think that's something that can often get overlooked, because does it take work to be agile? I mean, it does. You have to be willing to stay up on the markets. You have to be willing to make adjustments. But it's one of the few businesses that an individual can own that I feel like you have the ability to do that.
No, I agree. And it's one of the things I do think it separates the resellers that continue reselling, the resellers that don't, the resellers that quit. It's just the ability to adapt. Right. I mean, I very easily, people get on my case all the time. Like, hey, Rolando, it seems like you're trying to do the same old. And you're right. Like, that's why sometimes I didn't thrive. Right. And then once I did, right, one of the big moves I did in 2022, 2023 was I started getting away from clothing, and I started doing more of collectibles and toys and all. And it helped. It definitely shifted, and it brought in more profit. It made my processes very more streamlined, because it was easier to pack, easier to list, easier to ship. So you got to be able to adapt. But before we move on with that, what's the date? It's going to be April 9th when this episode drops. That means we're like 6 days away from taxes. That means if you're stressing out, you're like, what am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to go? Strongly encourage you to go to My Reseller Gina. I just forgot that we need to pick our winners. It's an ongoing joke. Somebody said in the comments. It is. Now we're in April. So now we have to announce the February winner and the March winner in April. So stay tuned to our next update. The look of this.
You better double check with My Reseller Genie that they're okay with us giving out things months later.
No, because it was the promotion was January through March. So I think we're golden if we announce the winners next week. It's all good. So, but if you don't have time to wait, right, and you're like, hey, I need to get in there. I need to import all my eBay stuff, my Poshmark stuff. I want to have something ready for my tax person. Go to My Reseller Genie. Use our code Pure Hustle. You get 15% off the first month. And that will help you get yourself ready for taxes. And it's such a great tool, because I love how it just sometimes works in the background. Like, I don't have to worry about stuff. I come back. Maybe I got to touch up some inventory stuff, maybe tweak a few things here and there. But it's nice to be able to hand this information over to my tax person, and they can run with it. It allows you to make sure you put your cost of goods, make sure you get a Schedule C done, all these different things. So make sure you use our code Pure Hustle for 15% off the first month. And maybe this was a ploy all along. was to just keep people listening to the podcast for the winter, so we got more listens or views. I'm just joking. No, that was never the call. It's called Orlando. Just needs to put it on a calendar, right? That's just it. I just don't have it on a calendar, so I'll make sure to put it on a calendar. But check out my Reseller Genie. All right. So I don't know. I'm gonna move on to this next point here. This idea that those that specialize in niches are usually the ones that win in reselling, right? Regardless of the economy, regardless of the macro trends. Because what happens is the better you get at learning something, it doesn't matter if like it tanks. Like there's certain things like Beanie Babies. It doesn't matter what kind of expert you are. You're gonna fail with Beanie Babies, right? But there's other places that are more general, like vintage toys, video games, camera lenses. Like I wish I knew camera lenses, like because I come across them all the time, and I know I'm leaving money on the table by not sourcing them, right? Or maybe it's certain kinds of clothing, maybe it's shoes, whatever it is, right? There's an ability to make a killing. I think of is it Renzi, the people that sold shoes? I remember when we first started. By the way, I want to talk about this real quick. It's fascinating to me when I go on Instagram, when I go on TikTok, and I realize, Mike, you and I have lived 8 years of our lives on this podcast, and seeing all these people that we started accounts with at the same time, right? Like Renzi Sales, Reezy Resells, Craigslist Center was a little bit before, was before us a little bit. Just all these people, and seeing how people continue to hustle, right? Are continuing. Some people have kind of left it. Right, some people have gone into real estate. Some people went back to 9 to 5 because, like me, like they felt that they were called to do something else, and that reselling was a nice vehicle till then. But anyways, I just want to comment on that, the idea that all these people, even though some of them have not completely stuck to full-time reselling, they've actually niched down. Like they have figured things out. Like Renzi Sales, they were very big on shoes. In the beginning, I remember they were just doing like selling on like Facebook Marketplace, and they were making like a few hundred a week. And now they're making thousands a week. Thousands. They're making upper six figures. Like maybe they're making $500,000. I don't know, but they're making some obscene numbers. And why? Well, they niched down, right? They understood their product. They knew what sold. They knew how to sell it fast. They figured out the shipping for those items. They got their systems down, right? So specialists are pretty good at not only just figuring out what's profitable, but you end up having a lot of repeat buyers because people trust your store and they trust what you sold. You know what I'm saying, Mike?
Yeah, no, that makes sense for sure. I mean, I've kind of really liked what Craigslist Hunter said when we did an interview back in the early days of the podcast. And I don't remember exactly how he worded it, but essentially it was phrased with the idea of like learn new niches, but like do it slowly. So learn a couple each year and like really figure out new things. And that's really stuck with me. And I think that's probably the best way to learn because over the course of, let's say 10 years of reselling, if you learn 2 new niches, like, I mean, I know camera lenses pretty well, and certain other camera equipment, camera bodies to an extent, not as well as the lenses. I've learned quite a bit about ham radio. I know a lot about board games, right? Like every so often I'm learning new niches. And so I haven't fully niched down into like one specific category, like this is my category, but I have probably a handful, like 5 or 6 categories that I most often sell in and I'm most often am picking up in. And I've definitely had success there because the more you know about something, the more you can make in it. It's like, I kind of think it's like almost like the 80-20 rule where, if you know 20% of something, you're going to get 80% of the benefit. Yeah. So if you know 20% of a niche, you're going to get probably 80% of the benefit you can get out of that niche. But that other 80%, if you could really start to get into like the nitty gritty, even though it's like the only 20% more, sometimes that's where the real money is at, right? It's like, I found this specialized version of this that I know is really unique. And so you're getting, as you become more of an expert in something, you are able to spot things that, are going to make you even more money. You're going to build connections, right? You're going to be able to make, sourcing is going to be easier because you're going to end up connecting with a handful of people who have those items or have a way of sourcing those items and getting them to you. And so, yeah, I definitely think niching down is very, very useful. The more specialized you can be. I mean, if you're only in one niche, you got all of your eggs in one basket, it can be devastating if something happens to that. If you're like, hey, I'm really into cosmetics and that's my niche. well, I mean, all it takes is for like news to break about, this certain ingredient in cosmetics is, causing cancer. And all of a sudden the demand for that drops significantly. And if that's 70-80% of your business, well, you're going to be hurting. So you definitely want to be niche down, but you also want to have that flexibility, like we were talking about earlier, where you can pivot into other niches as you need to.
No, I agree. And one more before we get into our hustle of the week. I thought I'd talk about the idea that there's always inventory, like all the time. Like those resellers that are making it happen. Like I've seen some that started at thrift stores, and then they're like, you know what, I'm gonna try storage units, and now they're killing it at storage units, because even though storage wars kind of killed that market because it became super popular and there's a bunch of people, it's kind of weighing down a little bit. And maybe in your town, your area, storage units are a thing, right? Or you can go to garage sales, right? I know for me, I tried again this past weekend to go to garage sales here in San Francisco. Yeah, it's not a thing out here. It's just not. I went to a couple of thrift stores and it was okay. It wasn't great. So I need to go to the flea markets. Like that's just what I'm going to have to do. And I'm going to have to get uncomfortable. It's kind of funny that I say that because I don't mind getting uncomfortable. I just, for a reason, I struggle with trying to negotiate with somebody who knows how much their stuff is worth, right? Like when you go to a garage sale, people don't care about how much their stuff is worth because they just want to offload it. So they don't research it. So they don't know. So it's easy to get deals. This, I feel like, is going to be a little bit more of a challenge, but we'll see what happens, right? And all the time, right? And I hate saying this, but like people are passing away and there's estate sales galore to go to, right? Or there's stores that are shutting down, or, eBay arbitrage. Like there's so much opportunity. So if you're in this place, you're like, I can't source, I can't find anything, you're just not looking. Like there's plenty of opportunity out there, even with good sell-through rate, even items that are not going to just sit in your store that they'll sell pretty quick. There's a lot out there. The key thing is about being consistent, right? You have to consistently source. Like right now, I could say all day that garage sales aren't a thing, but I haven't been consistently trying to find garage sales, right? I remember there was a one time back before the podcast, my buddies and I would go to garage sales to find stuff. And I remember every morning, I would say 3 out of 4 mornings, we'd get together and we'd do this and we'd be like, yeah, there's not really anything out there. And it wasn't that there was anything out there. I just didn't learn. I just wasn't consistent. I wasn't checking the routes. I wasn't, making sure I had some kind of knowledge before I walked onto a garage sale or a yard sale or an estate sale. So be aware, there is plenty of inventory. And so the reason that those people that are right now killing on eBay reselling is because they figured it out. Whether it be like Tech and Sports, who has to find thousands of items a day because he ends up reselling them to other resellers to resell, or whether it's, you start networking, giving out business cards, so then people will call you about when there's a closeout or they're trying to sell an estate. Like to me, there is zero excuses for not being able to find inventory. It literally is everywhere. So
yeah. I mean, I think you're right. There's just so many opportunities. A lot of times people get laser focused in on one specific way, kind of like you were saying with garage sales. Because same thing. I mean, that's kind of where I got started, garage sales and thrift stores. But some of my most successful purchases, even though I haven't done many like auctions, some of my most successful purchases have come from people who've purchased auctions and then they're offloading stuff because then they end up not selling it. Like I've gotten lots of phones that way. I've gotten some CPR stuff that way. I've gotten various things like different equipment, office equipment, school equipment. You could pick up at, different types of auctions or, contact businesses. Like you said, there's places that are closing. Businesses all the time are changing phones. Like we were talking about the phones that we've been selling recently in my inventory. And we have a friend of ours who that's what he does. He's like an IT guy that installs new phone systems for places. And it's like amazing. My wife says back when she was working full time, her office is like every year and a half, like they got a new phone system. It's like, what's wrong with the old phones? It's like, well, they're getting rid of those phones and they've got a new one because there's some feature that they want to use, or I don't know, somebody knows somebody. I think a lot of that stuff is like, they get money funding in a department, they've got to spend it. And so it's like, well, let's upgrade this stuff. And a lot of times that stuff can be very, very valuable because other companies, they're trying to pinch pennies and they're like, well, this phone broke, so we're going to go on eBay and buy, 10 new ones to replace for this department that theirs are getting bad. So there's so many ways that you can source. Yeah, I agree. I concur.
Yeah, you should be, if you figure out how to source, you'll be able to start killing it on eBay. All right, let's go on to our hustles of the week. People that are getting those big sales.
Yeah, hustle of the week. Come on, hustlers. It's the freaking hustle of the week. Yeah, our first hustle of the week comes from Salad Sauce from the Discord. Says, I paid $10 for this model in one of my monthly pickups. Took less than a month to sell, and it was a new in-box Titanic book and submersible model set for $599.99.
So crazy.
That's crazy. I've sold a handful of pretty expensive models, one to Japan for like $400 or $500. I do want to say though, is it a little bit like kind of sad that the Titanic model is submersible?
Well, as long as it floats, I think it's okay.
Oh,
that's the problem with the Titanic. It needs to be able to float.
It's got to float. Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm not. So, yeah, how do you recreate it? Do you have to? I don't know. Is it too soon? Too soon to talk about this?
Yeah, it's I guess it's always too soon when you're talking about stuff like that. But
I mean, you'd have to create a model like landscape.
This Titanic can be fully submerged all the way in your like fish tank, and it's gonna hold up.
I never even thought about that. That is hilarious. I mean, it shouldn't be, but it is. All right. Hey, nice work there, Salad Sauce. All right, this comes from Tim the Slim. Of course, we got to give another shout out to Tim the Slim from the Discord. And he's just killing it. He's one of those guys that I go, if I had the drive of this guy, like I would be next level reselling right now, because he is always out there making those deals. Tim the Slim from the Discord said, sold within hours to a freight forwarder. Only 3 ever sold on eBay before it on Tariff, $600, $650, and $1K, all for parts. Mine was also completely untested, so I priced upper middle. Some sort of vintage broadcasting recording equipment from the estate of a wartime CBS photojournalist. Paid $30. Part of a larger estate buy. Should have some more gems from this one coming up in the coming months, but this might take the cake. Sold a vintage Sony BVH-500A professional video recorder for $799.99 plus ship. So $30 to almost $800. And here's the thing, I forgot to put this on here. Later on that feed, on the Discord feed about the hustle of the week, he sells another one for like $600, $700. So just definitely killing it at this estate sale. Tim the Slim not scared about shipping those things out too. Those things are heavy. Yeah. So nice, crazy work.
What a cool find too. All right, our next one comes for Flip for More on Instagram. So this estate sale was at the home of a doctor. In the garage, I found a Hewlett-Packard box, which piqued my interest because it was a stethoscope. Nothing computer related. Inside was a few random accessories, but no stethoscope. I checked comps anyways and realized it was worth something, so I ransacked the house and found the stethoscope in one of the bathrooms. On top of all of this, they had a brand new Bowflex home gym in the box for $225. I negotiated and got the Bowflex, which I kept, plus my other finds for $225 in
That's hustler right there.
Total. Nice. I wonder how much that stethoscope is worth. That's pretty cool.
It's right here. It's read the next line.
Oh, I didn't see that continues there. So anyway, sold a rare vintage Hewlett-Packard Report Sparage something stethoscope for $400 plus shipping. Good grief.
I know.
That's
so
fantastic.
The Bowflex was free, right? He got a full-on Bowflex.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then he sells this for $400. Like, that's nice work. Flip for More. You always have incredible hustle of the week from the early days to now. He's a real one. So
love it.
That was good. All right, Mike. What is your hustle of the week?
So nothing super huge compared to these. It's always hard to follow these up. But I talked, I think, on the previous podcast, picking up a Nintendo DS. Well, it also came with some, I was able to purchase a couple of games. And one of the games that I purchased was a Tetris. I totally forgot I picked up that Tetris when I bought the game because it didn't have like the charger, didn't have like any of the like other accessories with it. It was like in a different box. But anyways, I picked up a Tetris game, sold for $30. Right? Like it was, I probably paid $1 for the game because the price point on everything I averaged to about $5, but some of the items were much bigger. So I would say it was probably about $1 for that game, because I didn't really count that into the average sale price. If I throw it in there, everything, the price went down. So it's probably about $1. So $1 to $30 for a quick sale. I'm pretty much paid for everything else that I got at that garage sale. Yeah, some old games. I mean, Tetris, you can play that on your phone for free, but people like it.
It's cool. I love Tetris to this day. All right, so mine is like a 7-year hustle of the week. Those of you that are new, back when Toys R Us was shutting down in the United States, which you can find Toys R Us now at Macy's. Actually, there's one in near the.
Did you sell Funko Freddy?
No, I brought him with me. He actually has his own closet. I thought
that's where you're going with this.
No. I'm not selling that guy. Like, I have an altar set up for him and everything. I'm joking. But yeah, he's just chilling downstairs in my in one of my garage closets. But he made it safely. So when this, in case you're wondering, I did buy a huge display, Freddy Funko display, from Toys R Us for about $1,000. It's probably worth like $5,000 to $6,000 now, but just can't get rid of it. So
gotta get rid of it, man.
One day. All right. So I bought a ton of things when Toys R Us was closing. The biggest one was Playmobil. Like I dropped $5,000 to $6,000 on those. But the one I've kind of mentioned on the podcast, but it's been a while. There was also one Toys R Us. I think this was the one, I don't know if it was Riverside or somewhere out there. And they had all this Leapfrog stuff, like tons and tons of Leapfrog. And I don't think it was original to Toys R Us. I remember this company had brought in stuff from, I guess, like FAO Schwartz. Like they bought out an FAO Schwartz and they threw it into the closing of the store so people would buy it. And I ended up buying probably, I'm trying to remember how many it was, but about 165 Leapfrog fridge phonics, like the magnets. I don't know if you ever seen those, but it's like you put the little house on the fridge and there's the letters, like you can put it in and you go, A says, A, whatever, right? I don't know. Every letter makes a sound. So anyways, so I bought 160 of those. And I paid $5 a piece for all of them, right? So it was, I paid almost $1,000 for all of them. And as I was moving, I took stock of how many I had left, right? Of the 165, I still have 60 left, like around, let's say 60. I think it's like 63, but let's say 60. 60 left. So that means about 105 I sold them. I've sold 105 of them. Average price has been about $20 to $30 a piece. Right, if you do the math, I don't know what is that math. That's some crazy math, right? I mean, it's not crazy, but it's a good number. So let's go bottom number, right? So the 105 of them for $20 a piece, right? That's $2,100, right? And that's the bottom. I'm pretty sure. I know I've sold many of them for $35 because it's vintage, right? You can't get it anywhere else. I'm the only one that sells it on eBay, and it was one of those things where I was like, I'm so glad because I still have 60 of them left. I have other Leapster stuff. And that Toys R Us, I remember, I don't know, I dropped maybe 20 to 30K, like within 2 to 3 weeks, going Toys R Us to Toys R Us and just buying out whatever toys I could. And I made that money back within 6 months. It was wild. It was a crazy time. But I just share this story as a reminder that, like, if there's a store shutting down and you see the opportunity, and like this stuff will sell and you're short on money, like do whatever you can. Like luckily at that time I was cash heavy and I was credit card heavy. Like I had a bunch of credit cards that I hadn't even touched. I had like a close to like, I don't know. At that time, I think I had close to like 80K in credit, right? Which for me was a big deal back then. And I had no problem maxing out cards, and I did, and it was completely worth it. I paid off those credit cards. I made that money back. So if that opportunity ever arises, like a store is shutting down, there's stuff that you could sell, I would go all in if you could, right? Yep. Again, you got to. There's a lot of stores
shutting down right now too, right? I mean, you had Joann's just recently. You had Party City. Mm-hmm. Even like restaurants like Chipotle, other restaurants that are closing down, like a lot of Red Lobsters have closed down. We've been successful even just selling merch from restaurants, whether it's items from the restaurant or like, the seasoning from a restaurant. So like those can be very successful too, especially if one of those places were to close. And so don't overlook when something's closing, even if you're not necessarily able to get into a Chipotle or whatever to buy their kitchen equipment to sell, which, I mean, there's definitely money to be made there if you can do it. But even if it's like, hey, here's memorabilia, that memorabilia is going to go up in price, at least temporarily. And then I think in the long term as well, because people, I mean, think about like something like Blockbuster. A Blockbuster cap is going to sell for good money now because it's the nostalgia aspect. And so, you know, companies come and go. You know, we've lost so many, you know, pour one out for your all the old businesses type of a thing, right? Like, 'cause a lot of them have closed down. You got like Circuit City and all those places. It's just like, farewell, my friends, they've closed down. But if you've got memorabilia or merchandise from there that's like specific to that place, you can do really well with that. And so just being, you know, whether it's something like as sad as Toys R Us closing, which, I mean, gosh, my wife and I talk about that all the time. Like, wish there was a store like that as easy as Toys R Us used to be just to take our kids to. So it's sad seeing a lot of the, you know, classic American heritage kind of going away, with those stores closing down. But at the same time, I hate to be like, hey, we're vultures coming in, but I've also got to feed my family. And so using those opportunities as a way to, you know, not just feel bad for those companies, but to make sure that I'm also taking care of my family. And so you can definitely source those things.
Yeah, and like one of my best ones that I haven't mentioned in a long time was Office Depot. I paid $600 for a bunch of pens, and I ended up making $5,000. Right, and they're just pens. Like, I mean, they're like special like gel pens. I don't even remember the brand, but I remember buying these, and I'm like, oh, why am I buying this? But over time, like, it took some time, but it made a killing. So you got to strike when those opportunities hit. So make sure to do that. Hey, before we move on, if you're wondering, like, hey, how do I get on the Discord? You had mentioned the Discord and Hustle of the Week. What you need to do is go to patreon.com/PureHustlePodcast. And for $5.55 and $5.55 a month, okay? There's not even meal deals out there. Oh, no, there's the Wendy's. You can still do the Wendy's where you get like a fries, chicken nuggets, and a cheeseburger and a soda for like $4 or $5. Just for the price of that Wendy's meal, you can be on the Discord and make a ton more money. So check us out. We have all kinds of resellers. Mike, I saw you added some channels. I saw you put one like seller to seller deals, right? So that's like resellers selling to resellers. You put an Amazon channel on there too.
And that came from suggestions from our active members in the Discord, right? Like, we are a flexible Discord. So as people are realizing like, hey, here's how we'd like to use this thing. We're trying to make the community better all the time. And honestly, the community is kind of takes care of itself because there's so many knowledgeable people in there who know what they're doing, willing to help out, offer suggestions, or even just a place to rant if you need to. I love our Discord community for sure.
No, it was really cool. I mean, and I think about all the advice. Like, Mike and I are in there as much as we can, but there's sometimes we're not there. But it's not the Rolando and Mike show. It's like the whole Pure Hustle podcast community coming together and helping each other out. So if you haven't checked it out yet, the way to do that is help us out on Patreon, which allows us to continue pumping out free episodes. Go to patreon.com/Pure Hustle Podcast. Go to the link below for $5.55 a month. And if you want to follow us on social media, we are Pure Hustle Podcast on all platforms, except we are Pure Hustle Cast on X. As always, you can leave us, an email. Go to purehustlepodcast@gmail.com. That's purehustlepodcast@gmail.com. Always appreciate those. I always love when we get Hustle of the Week that come through those. We haven't had one in a little bit, so if you want to, want us to share, make sure you leave it on there. And thank you to all of you that listen to the podcast. Always appreciate every single one of you that listens. If you haven't yet, come on over and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit that like button, smash that bell notification, whatever way you want to do it. And always grateful for all the reviews that we get on iTunes, right? And it's been a little bit since we got on some reviews. We are the most listened to reselling podcast. We are also the most reviewed reselling podcast on Apple iTunes. So if you haven't come on over, hit that 5 stars. Tell us why you listen to our podcast. It will help people and it will help us get higher on the algorithm. All right, so let's talk a little bit more why people are killing it at this point in time.
All right, what do you got next?
I was waiting for Mike to jump in. All right, so let's talk about shipping. I'll throw it in here.
Let's do it.
So I think what separates a lot of people is their willingness to ship items that others won't. Now, I'm not saying everybody has to be one of those people that does freight or ships out huge items, right? But there are people that separate themselves from the crowd and make a killing, right? We know some of them on social media right now. I think of like Flea Market Flipper. That guy, I think that guy does freight like all the time, but he makes a ton of money doing it, right? And so if you're able to figure that out, you can figure it out. But it's not only that. It's also understanding like, you know, you can actually make money in shipping, right? Because there might be something that it's priority, like medium flat rate, and it sells in your state. Well, you don't have to sell it. You don't have to send it flat rate. You can still send it priority, right? And you save $5 or $6. And so you continue making money on shipping, right? Or you can figure out how to package things correctly, right? You can get the dimensions down. You can make things arrive safely. And if you're able to do all those things, you continue to be a reseller that people want to buy from because your items arrive safely, you ship quickly, right? And sometimes people don't even care about how much you're spending on shipping as long as they know the item that you're sending is going to be well packaged and is going to arrive safely. So don't lose track of sight of the idea that, hey, shipping also plays a part into why resellers are killing it.
Yeah, that's good. And then in addition to that, like there are things that's like we can look back on, kind of like I was talking earlier about like how things have gotten worse in society, how things have gotten worse in reselling. But we also live in a time where we have more tools, and technology is a tool that can help us in ways that you would have talked to us 10 years ago. We wouldn't have believed you was even possible, even at the beginning of the podcast. Things like, you know, simple tools as far as something like auto removing a background. Like now that just seems so common, but when we first started this podcast, if I was like, hey, I could take pictures out in my in the trunk of my car and it's going to look just as good as your one in your $200 photo booth, you'd have laughed at me, right? Like, that didn't even seem possible then. And now it's like we've got things that help us research. Like we've got Tariff, we've got you know, even doing research on something like ChatGPT. AI, it's like, okay, there's a lot of novelty kind of silliness that happens with some AI stuff. But also, like, people are starting to push the boundaries and see what can be done. I remember when it first came out, we're like, okay, how are we going to use this on reselling? Well, I mean, as much as it's easy to kind of mock, like, okay, well, the AI on eBay coming up with the description, is that really that big of a deal? And it's like, well, the savvy resellers are able to do research into an item quickly using AI, where they're not necessarily combing through Google for hours and hours to find stuff. In addition, they can come up with decent descriptions and titles that might be SEO optimized without necessarily getting a degree in SEO and understanding how it all works. Even to things like developing things that can scrub eBay for listings or scrub Facebook Marketplace. Like, I have no coding experience at all, but I can ask for certain things to be made if I'm wise enough or tactful enough with AI. I can have things built for me that I can then use in order to scrub things like Facebook Marketplace for listings that I can get notifications quicker. So we have so many tools available to us. And one downside to that is it kind of levels the playing field. I remember when I first started reselling before the podcast, like I had tried a couple of times of like, I'm going to do this garage sale thing. I had a friend who told me, hey, yeah, I sell a lot of like used dirt bike stuff, and kids' dirt bike stuff is great because they grow out of it so fast. So I go to garage sales and I buy it because dirt bikes were really big where I grew up. I buy this stuff and I sell it on eBay or at, you know, to other people in the area, and I make a ton of money. So I was like, I'm going to try that. And so I went to like garage sales, and I would literally, this is no joke, I had a pad of paper and I'm like, okay, here's a 49ers mug, and I'm trying to write down information on it. And like, I don't know if this is something I should pick up or not. So I look at the stuff at the garage sale, and then I would drive home and go on eBay on like the slow dial-up internet, and I would look up those items and realize, oh, no, none of this is worth money. Oh, that might be worth money. And then go back and that item's gone. And of course, if you knew a niche really well, that was good for you because you didn't have competition of just a random person showing up with a cell phone being able to look up sold comps. So yes, if you were the expert at the time, technology can kind of level the playing field. But in the same way, if you can figure out how to use these tools in ways that other people aren't, or to just use them to the best of their ability, it's going to make learning new niches quicker. It's going to make your listings quicker. It's going to make taking pictures quicker. It's going to make all of the different aspects that we have of reselling that's kind of tedious. Even things like inventory systems, right? You can use technology in ways that would have been, I still love using spreadsheets because I know how to use them pretty well. But now there's so many tools available. I mean, we talked about My Reseller Genie. like what used to take a long time with paper, to keep track of your costs or like on a spreadsheet and then take to a tax person. Now we've got tools that we can use. And so just realizing that even if things get harder for us in reselling, we also have more tools to make things easier. If we were dealing with some of the things we're dealing with now without any of these tools, things would look very different. So just remembering to kind of stay optimistic, and also going back to that idea of being flexible, staying flexible and keeping up with what are the tools I can use, what tools are better, what tools am I not optimizing completely, and make your reselling as efficient as possible with all of the different tools we have available.
No, I agree. There's so much. I mean, I just think about when we started the podcast, like half the stuff that I use, like Google Lens was not a thing. Photo Room was not a thing. I don't know, whatever. This just wasn't there, right? And so now there's no excuse if you're not using technology here. This next one, it's kind of related to the whole thing that it's, buying used is like the cool thing. But not only that, it's like people are more budget conscious, especially in a downturn economy, right? They don't want to pay, drop more money on their high interest credit card. They don't want to pay, top of the line. They don't want to have to go to a store and end up having to take out a loan or do, you can even do that on Walmart and stuff. The whole, like, I forget what it's called, but, buy now, pay later. Like they don't want to deal with it. Right.
You see, they're doing that now with like Uber Eats.
Oh yeah. I saw that. Like,
oh my goodness. Dave Ramsey's got to be having a heart attack.
I know.
You're $5,000 in debt for Chipotle.
Yeah, I know.
That's true.
I've never DoorDash. Like I can't, like I think about, I selfishly think how much food I can buy for the money that I'm using on the DoorDash, right? Like I'm better off just going out somewhere eating. I know that's backwards. Most people would be like, oh, you all the money you're losing. No. I think efficiency. Okay. All right. Now in a downturn economy, every article that we shared from 2008 after the recession to other drops in the economy was that thrift stores thrive and online sales thrive, especially for used goods. And so don't look at this as oh man, I'm going to throw in the towel, like economy's going south. Like, let's say it does. Let's say things do get bad. The data out there tells you that if you're an eBay seller, you will end up better off, right? I think one of the best examples was, the era of 2020, where a lot of people were like, oh, this is the end of the world. But for resellers, it was the greatest time on earth. Ever. Nothing. I don't know if we'll ever have a good time like that. But things were selling all day long, and we were technically in a downturn economy, right? Thousands of people lost their jobs. Yes, there were stimulus checks, but at the same time, like people just went online and just started buying, right? So be aware that people are looking for those deals online.
Yeah, and it kind of goes with the idea of like, it's not just the collectibles that people are buying online right now. It's like everyday things, right? Like if you're about ready to go into college, you need a good calculator, or you're a high school student, you got SATs coming up, you can go and buy the brand new one. But if prices start to go up on items, well, I'm going to get, my appliances, my calculators, my like everyday things from eBay, as opposed to buying those things brand new. And I'm going to save a ton of money doing it. So it's not just like, hey, I have to be in the collectible market. Like if you're just in the needed goods, and that's something we've talked about too. Like when there's lots of free money just floating into the economy, when like more money is being printed and just thrown out there, and people are just kind of given money, like here's money, it inflates the money and it makes it so that it devalues the dollar. But for a short period of time, you're able to like collect a bunch of those dollars off of items that are like kind of wants and not needs. And then when the opposite happens and things are getting hard and there's less money flowing freely, well, people want what they need and not just what they want. And so people are going to be trying to get deals on those things as well. And there's, I don't know. I'm interested to see how a lot of things go, because there's so many elements in the macro economy that's just too much to talk about on the podcast. Orlando and I could probably have if we had a separate podcast that wasn't reselling related, we could go into that stuff for hours and hours, I'm sure. But I mean, as we see energy prices going down, right? Because it's like, yeah, the items that I would get at the Dollar Tree that I can get from, China for cheap, those prices go up. But if energy prices as a whole go down, that has a ripple effect across the economy too, right? Which makes it so like, hey, driving to source goes down, postage might go down, like various things start to drop, like items in stores could actually, prices could drop because it's not as much energy cost to get those items to the store. So there's so many things that we don't know, which again is why it's so nice being a reseller, knowing that, hey, if things get better, collectibles go up, I'm going to do just fine. If things get really hard for a little while, necessities values go up, I'm going to do fine, right? Like I can be in whichever market I need to be in because I'm diversified in my inventory, and I can pivot quickly. And even if it takes me a couple of weeks or a month to source the items I need, I can get into the market where I'm going to be most successful.
No, agreed. And, to end on a high note here is like, there aren't many hustles or jobs or careers like reselling that we've brought up all these different facts, right? The idea that you can quickly adapt, the idea that you can source from anywhere, the fact that you have total control of your business, adjusting prices, running sales, doing promotions. Like, it is a very independent thing that can function independently of the macroeconomics. Now, yes, do you need buyer confidence and you need, consumer money and all those things? Yes, but those people will always be there. Right. The question is, are you able to meet them where they need you to meet them? Right. Is your price going to meet them at the price point that they're willing to pay? Is your customer service going to meet them at a place where they feel comfortable with you and they trust you? Are your policies, right? Like your return policies or your shipping policies, are those going to meet people so they can get the items as fast as they want, and they can also trust you that, if things don't work out, they can return it? Like, all this is flexible and changeable and doable. And regardless of the macro trend, regardless of who's in office as the president in the United States, regardless of, tariffs, regardless of maybe even wartime, whatever it may be, there's always an opportunity to be made, very successful in reselling. But it's about applying all these things that we talked about, adaptability and inventory. And we haven't even gotten into, like, I think a lot of other things. Like, we haven't talked about how negotiation allows a lot of people to kill it in reselling, right? They're able to make good deals and they're able to sell for cheap. We haven't talked about the fact that they've streamlined processes, and the fact that they streamlined them has allowed them that even though they are maybe selling things with low margins, they're selling a ton of them because they figured out how to list them fast. They figured out how to ship them fast. They figured out how to source them and process them fast. Like, there's so many opportunities in reselling. So don't ever get caught making the excuse that, reselling is dead, or reselling is not going to make it, or this administration is going to kill resellers. No. There's always this resilient aspect to reselling in which you can kill it if you're willing to make it happen. With that being said, thank you everyone for tuning, and make sure to be real,
be relevant,
and be reselling.
Peace.
From garage sales to thrift store aisles, we hunt for treasure, stacking them in piles. Hustling hard, making deals all day, flipping finds, turning profit our way. You hustle